Welcome to Executive Insights, a special panel edition on addressing the cybersecurity talent gap. I'm Nasheen Liu, partner with the IT Media Group, a CIO-centric media company. Today, we gather three brilliant minds from the technology industry who have been at the forefront of combating cyber threats and nurturing the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. As technology continues to shape our world, the importance of safeguarding our digital assets has become paramount. Unfortunately, with an ever-increasing number of cyber threats and the shortage of skilled professionals, addressing the cybersecurity talent gap has become a critical concern for technology leaders and organizations around the world. In this panel, we want to delve into the heart of this pressing issue and explore practical strategies for bridging the gap. Our panelists will share actionable insights drawing from their extensive experiences in technology. We will look at skills and competencies required to combat the threats and practical strategies for building a robust next-generation workforce and ecosystem. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our three panelists. Melissa Carvalho, Global Vice President, Cyber Strategic Services, Royal Bank of Canada. Sean Morton, Senior Vice President, Professional Services with Trellix. And Marvin Wong, Vice President, Business Intelligence, Technology, and Security with Secure Energy. Welcome, and thank you for joining the conversation. Now, speaking of cybersecurity talent, the first thing that often comes to mind is where and how do we find these qualified people? But is the historical definition of being qualified good enough? And if not, let's take a step back and start with the criteria for the modern cybersecurity professional. What does a modern cybersecurity professional look like and why? So Melissa, I'm going to start with you.
That's perfect. Thank you, Nasheen. I think that from our experience, one of the misconceptions is that you have to have a cyber degree. And the reality is the bad actors, they don't have cyber degrees when they come and they hack us or they attack us. And so if you look at the criteria that we look for a real life experience. We look for good communication skills, individuals who can social engineer their way to get additional data, great analytical skills, good problem solvers, and then people who work in the business, understand the processes, understand the way things work, are really important when we're looking for skill sets.
That's a perfect point, and not just based on degrees and education, but looking for diverse backgrounds and experience. And what's your experience and perspective, Sean?
Yeah, let me just build upon what Melissa just shared. I think we first need to look at the current cybersecurity talent landscape, as you mentioned, to truly understand the need for changing the criteria for candidates. Now, each year, there's an organization called ISC Squared. They're an international nonprofit membership association for information security leaders. What they do is they perform a cybersecurity workforce study. And in their most recent report, I believe it's from the end of 2022, they identified a cybersecurity workforce gap of 3.4 million people globally. It's incredible. And really, this gap spans across cybersecurity companies that both sell products and services to the large and small businesses that require cybersecurity talent to protect their organizations. Now, for many years, we've expected, as Melissa described, those candidates to carry at least a 4-year degree in computer science or related technologies. And historically, those fields have been heavily attracted to a niche demographic. But to truly elevate our industry and cover that workforce talent gap, we need to change the criteria. We need to invest in individuals from underrepresented demographic groups, change the background requirements and education experience. Given that cybersecurity now hits all facets of our lives, it hits businesses of all sizes, and it hits every industry in the world, there is really a dire need to diversify our talent pool with candidates that have different experiences and backgrounds and races and genders and all ages to meet those diverse customer needs. Simply put, for me, and the way we think about it at Trellix, it's anyone with a love for technology. It's anyone with a passion to take on complex challenges, working in an industry that really changes daily. It's anyone with the drive to do what we call meaningful, soulful work that makes a positive impact on our world. And really, that's truly the ideal candidate that I want to hire.
Good point. It really requires out-of-box sort of thinking. And Marvin, your perspective.
Finding those people in the day-to-day. And I think that takes a lot of time to get to know our employee base. And typically we've traditionally gone outside and said, we don't have these skill sets. Let's go external hire or consultancy. But more recently, what we've started to do is look inward. Exactly to Sean's point, who's curious? Who has that level of care for the business and sense of urgency as well, right? And so what we found is we have a lot of people within the organization who are very interested in cyber, but they might be an application developer. They might be a BI analyst. And although the title doesn't say that they're capable, they have underlying amazing traits that would make them very great cybersecurity professionals. And so we've been investing in them to give them experience and seeing if it works out. And the one thing that I would say that is very important to me is open-mindedness, because I think the space is moving so quickly that although you are protected today, does not mean that you're protected tomorrow. And this idea of hubris, this idea of we got it covered is a very closed-minded perspective. I think you need to be very open-minded to there's going to be a new way to get in, and it's okay. We just need to get ahead of it or react to it.
Curiosity and open-mindedness, well said. So now that we understand the criteria, what hiring practices do we need to change to really diversify and enrich the talent pool? So Sean, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Really great question. And as we at Trellix, we look to diversify our hiring pool. We're trying to create new pathways for people coming into cyber. And really, there are three kind of key ways that we're doing that. First of all, we're partnering with nonprofits. Trellix partners with organizations such as GoTara, which is aimed at empowering women to navigate and grow their careers. We partner with ASE, the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, to empower those from Hispanic communities to build soft and hard skills related to cybersecurity. And we're raising awareness at historically Black colleges and universities through things like student mentoring and career training. Next, we also need to update the education and skill requirements on job recs. This means getting your HR departments aligned with considering candidates from non-traditional backgrounds, looking to build pipeline of young talent right out of school, potentially without a lot of experience, but have that passion. And finally, we must work with governments on changing the funding and the programs for cybersecurity. This includes getting cybersecurity awareness and training ingrained into the learning curriculum in schools as early as elementary grades, really making it a fundamental part of our education going forward.
Really appreciate your sharing those three best practices. And Marvin, what about secure energy?
Sean, you covered so much there. I think that was pretty much the whole gamut there. The only piece that I would add, Nasheen, is around the mentorship and coaching, which is really, really, really important. So you have this demographic that's coming in from diverse backgrounds. They could be young, they could be old, they could be whatever. But you also have a lot of technical and institutional knowledge, and ensuring that you have a good culture where there's that transference of knowledge where you can learn from both sides. I think that's when we talk about that organic growth of talent, that's what we need to focus on. And I think you can get many more individuals up to speed very quickly through that model than trying to find the talent externally, because those are very hard to find right now.
And Melissa, I know this is the topic that's really dear and near to your heart, and you've made a lot of effort at RBC to try to tackle this challenge. Do you have any best practices and examples you'd like to share?
I do, and in fact, I really like some of the answers because those are areas that are new to me. I especially like nonprofits and working with nonprofits. But if I were to add a couple of things, we spend a lot of time working with universities at RBC, and one of the things we find is women leave the cyber practice or the cyber area before university. It's something that we then now started to invest in to bring women back into university, maybe as a second course or more mature students. So that's one area that we've been working with to include diversity in our hires. Another area is neurodiversity. And so for neurodiverse candidates, sometimes when we think of minorities and diversity, we think of what we can see and maybe not what we can't see. And so one of the things we've been doing is starting to write our questions in advance, put use cases forward, and that's been helping us attract a lot of neurodiverse talent. And then the last thing, and I know Marvin talked about it earlier, which is looking to hire from within, mentoring and sponsoring some of the people within our organization to help grow them into the practice of cybersecurity.
So much practical insights. Hiring the right people is only step one. Motivating them to want to stay with the organization is really the tough part. So on the topic of retention, how can we create a culture of collaboration and continuous learning and development for our team and for the next generation of leaders? And how can organizations address the burnout and high turnover rate that's often associated with this particular field? Marvin, do you have any thoughts?
That's, I think, a two-part question. The first part of it, I would say, is I think in technology, it's very easy to get siloed. Like, I do cybersecurity, you do network, you do app development, you do service desk. And what we have to get more in the habit of is bringing teams together to work on a common cause, not just your one function. So for instance, if you're going to develop an application to go to market, okay, bring the application people together to talk about why this application is important and who the customer is, with the cybersecurity professionals, with the networking professionals, and then say, okay, well, your piece is important for these reasons, right? A very good reason is we want to go to market. But you know what? If we don't have SOC 2 compliance, if we don't have a very strong track record and technology, framework around our application, we don't even get to play. So you are that critical to the success of this application in our organization and to our end customers. I think if we can make those linkages, that's very, very important. And traditionally, IT is not part of the business. It's a service to the business. How do we bring it closer to our customers? I think that's number one. And that brings motivation and inspiration to people who might not have had that in the past. I think the second piece around burnout, we have to recognize that people have finite amount of gas to produce and to work. So what are those things that you want to internalize, and what are the right things to go to a third party, to find partners? So a good example is we could have an internal 24/7 SOC. Great. Well, then you got to manage it and then you have to staff it and so on and so forth. We do it, let's say 8 hours a day, but then through the evenings, let's get a trusted third party to look after that and manage that for us. That brings gas back into our tank so that when we come back, we have at least some capacity to not only do our day jobs, but work on new things as well.
Great points. The first one being truly opening up that channel for communication and partnership between each siloed areas and between IT and the business. And the second one being knowing how much to take on and how much to give away. So I think that is a really important message to share here. And Melissa, what about you at RBC? I know this is a very topical issue or challenge for you.
I'm not sure I can answer the burnout question. I think the volume just keeps coming, and it's a matter of building it into our everyday life of prioritization and looking out for each other. But for the aspect of not only just hiring an individual into cybersecurity, but continuing to retain them, there are two ways I like to look at it. Number one is the carrot approach. So encouraging people to train the trainer. We have sessions called Learning for All. And what we do is we have an hour every week where we offer another individual in the team to teach others. We find when people teach the other people in the team, they think of it differently. They understand the problem differently, and that helps them grow a skill set that they might not normally have. The other approach is almost like a stick approach. And so the approach that we have with our managers and the teams is to make sure that we're building it into our performance metrics. Each year we measure each of our people. And so we try to encourage them by building goals collaboratively to empower them. But at the end of the year, we do assess them on how well they're retaining cybersecurity individuals. I think the thing that's really important to me to remember, it's this continuous growth mindset. And we have to think of the individuals that we hire as people who, even if they leave our organization, they are either in our network, they become our customer. And so if we think of it like that way, we really don't necessarily worry about that type of retention. It's just we're adding people into the cybersecurity domain.
Well said. And Sean, what about you at Trellix? What are some of the best practices that you have around the topic of retention and addressing burnout?
Yeah, really great questions and great responses so far. Just to add a couple additional things. First and foremost, absolutely recognize this is a massive challenge for cybersecurity firms trying to hire into roles. We do a couple things at Trellix to address the retention and really enable employee growth. First, we make sure that our employees all have clear career paths and an understanding and a plan against those career paths, whether they're an individual contributor, they're a manager, they're a leader. Those are always supplemented with learning programs, training platforms through third parties such as LinkedIn Learning to enable personal and professional growth. So that's kind of the first area. And second, we've also built up a number of internal voice platforms to try to create a more engaged and closer employee community around things like women's voice, pride voice, Black heritage voice, Hispanic voice, veterans voice, and abilities voice. And each of these approaches has enabled us to create that more engaged employee and really an employee that sees future growth within our company.
One underlining word that I'm hearing from all of you is empowerment. And I think that is such a powerful word, but it's also such a powerful strategy when it comes to truly developing and retaining our workforce. Despite our best intentions, sometimes we have to recognize that people do move on. And even in the best of times, we still don't have unlimited resources at our disposal. And we also know for a fact that cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility. Yes, cyber team holds the accountability, but cyber is everybody's business. So in order to better scale and leverage, how do we effectively partner with our stakeholders internally and externally to expand our reach? So I have a two-part question here. And the first part is directed for Melissa and Marvin. How do you promote a culture of cybersecurity awareness education among employees at all levels of your organization to mitigate the risk associated with human errors and insider threat? Melissa, I'm going to start with you.
Perfect. So I think the first thing is to run campaigns and to reach out to the individuals of the organization and to do three things. So number one, make it very simple, remove complexities. Cybersecurity is very complicated. And if you're trying to teach them everything there is to know, it just becomes overwhelming. The second thing is give them easy wins. So we gamify cybersecurity. We do little phishing campaigns and other things to make it really exciting and make it fun and to have people keep scores and do things like that. So make it a little bit more exciting. And then the third thing is when they go home, they have their families and other people, they end up educating and advising. And so really, if we educate our employees, they're educating so many more individuals. And so we want to look at making them cyber heroes within their own individual circles to really then extend further reach and ensure that they get more invested in cybersecurity.
Remove the complexity, make it fun, and make it personal and meaningful. So very good points. And Marvin, anything to add?
One of the biggest things is around terminology, because at the end of the day, the verbiage that we use in our industry as professionals it sounds ridiculous. Things like phishing, spear phishing, You know, to the everyday person who's not in tech, what does that actually mean? It just seems fictitious, not real. So I think we need to think about how do we change how we educate and utilize the right terminology so we can bring the masses with us and educate so that we can fight these forces together. I think the other piece is around sharing stories about how does this affect us in our personal lives. For example, there was an incident that happened a couple months ago here in Alberta where gas stations and car washes were compromised. And so people, when they got up in the morning, they couldn't go fill up for gas. They couldn't use their car wash cards. Well, all of a sudden, that fictitious thing that we talk about with cybersecurity becomes very, very real and very, very personal. And so when it gets to that point, that's when that's right, I get it. And I'm willing to invest in time to protect myself and my organization.
Speak their language and make it relevant and meaningful. Great points. And on the external side, Sean, how can organizations partner with educational institutions and vendor community to scale more strategically?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And the way I like to think about scale, and it's an area we haven't really talked about yet, addressing this gap through the power of technology. How do we better equip our cybersecurity professionals that we do have to do more? You know, externally for our customers at Trellix, we try to build tools, and I use this phrase all the time, but automating the mundane. Now, there's a lot of work that has to be done in cybersecurity to gather data, do lookups, stitch things together, try to make sense of stuff. If we can automate that for our cybersecurity professionals and let them focus on the things that are more interesting or more challenging, it drives better engagement with that employee. So our vision is really within the industry as a whole. How do you elevate our customers and their talent through things like automation, through AI, you know, the big buzzword of 2023? How do you guide them more appropriately through the experiences to, at the end of the day, take them down to what might have taken hours or days to do, down to minutes and seconds? You know, I expect the technology side of this gap and AI in particular to continue to make the people that we do have in the field better and faster and stronger with their cybersecurity skills, and up-level them while we continually and concurrently try to expand and diversify the talent pool itself.
Such great point, Sean, and automating the mundane. I love it. I think, you know, you brought up the topic of AI, for example, and that in its own could just afford us the part 2 of this entire discussion, which I'm kind of looking forward to. And today we've covered so much ground. We explored so many topics, from addressing the criteria for a modern cybersecurity professional to looking at strategies for hiring, retaining, and scaling our cybersecurity workforce and ecosystem. This has been such an insightful and thought-provoking conversation. I want to thank all 3 of you, Sean, Melissa, and Marvin, for your valuable contributions. This has been another episode of Executive Insights, a special panel edition by the IT Media Group. I'd like to thank Trellix for their partnership on this episode. My appreciation to all of you for watching, and I wish you a safe and secure cyber journey. If you like this panel video, please check out other content on our YouTube channel, including CIO Roundtable conversations and executive interviews. And don't forget to subscribe.